Here we are again. By popular demand, we're doing another one of our famous podcasts. It's great to have you here again.
It's great to be here. I so enjoyed the ones at the start of the year, and then the year got busy, and it's good to be here March doing a podcast with you, Dave. So always love the thinking that emerges.
Yeah, I know we're terrible. We talk consistency, but anyway, we are doing it, and that's what's important. Let's celebrate that, I guess. So,
I think you've been I think you've been very consistent this year. So you're being hard on yourself because I've seen all the other areas that you've been very consistent in. So well done.
oh, thanks, Mike. We all need encouragement. So it was we had a conversation a few days ago about the work I do with strength finders, and I know that you also are involved in also some personality profiling. And I thought it would be good for us to talk about how we use tools like Strength Finder, other tools to in our coaching, and how they. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Clifton Strengths, the Gallup Strengths Finder, and how I find that tremendously useful. Um, so yeah, what broadly, what is your thoughts on this whole personality profiling, strength finding, etc.?
I Well, it's been interesting for me to watch you with Strength Finders. So I got exposed to Strength Finders many years ago when I bought Marcus Buckingham's one of his books. Sure, we're talking 15, 16 years ago. And I loved the concepts that he was talking about. And it's helped me a lot when working with people, especially one or two of the practices that they implement. But I must say, as I've watched you, you've taken it to a new level. And what sparked my curiosity just a few days ago was how you said that you almost don't coach without it. And
Mm,
and so I've been noticing watching you do it, and it's interesting just to see that. I've always embarked with Strength Finders personality profiling, more of it being a guide, something that informs a resource that we can use. Been a little bit nervous of trying to decipher somebody from a set of questions that they've answered. And so a little bit not skeptical, a little bit putting it in its place.
mm,
And
mm,
then at the same time having seen incredible benefit through it.
mm,
But when I look at you, I see somebody who actually you could sell Clifton Strength Finders because
mm.
you
Fully
it is
embraced.
yeah, it's fully embraced. And so yeah, if I could throw the question back at you, would be what has brought about such belief in the product that wherever you go, you are
Mm,
getting people to do Strength Finders?
mm. Well, I have to say right from the thing, I don't have shares in it, although people would think I do.
Yeah.
um, I was first exposed to Clifton String Finders when I was running Energy Drive, which is my previous company, and we were looking at ways of how to recruit people that we needed for specific roles. And I was shown Clifton Strength Finders, and the Clifton Strength Finders divide the strength into execution, uh, relational, strategic or thinking, and influencing strengths for four groups. And it's very interesting that typically the people in a CEO type C-suite strong in thinking and influencing strengths, when people the next day are down in the executing realm are strong in executing and relational. And the studies are conclusive out there that that seems to be the best hiring. So we started hiring specifically looking for people who are strong in certain groups.
Mm.
Um, and the results were spectacular. So we weren't looking just on their strength, their CV, or how well they interviewed. We were applying the data that was coming from the strength finders, and it was a big tool. So it really opened my eyes. So I've been doing strength finders for over 12 years now, and we literally did not hire people until we decided what profile we wanted, and then short listed them to their experience and added experience to it. So I'm a big believer because of my experience more than any science in there. So in my coaching, I've taken the same view that I always start with who before what. I want to understand who are you, and I think a lot of the time we make decisions because we don't know who we are, or we haven't taken the time to really explore who we are, right? And understand who we are. And so when I'm coaching, the first thing I want to do is to really shed as much light on who are you. What are your innate strengths or the things that draw you. And I find that just tremendously helpful, and it brings a lot of clarity up front in the coaching process. And so although the strengths, I don't think they're 100% all the time, but I think they are in the medium to high 90s in my experience of getting people right. So that's where it's come from, and that's why I start there. With who before what. Yeah.
One of the practices or exercises that I got out of the book by Marcus Buckingham many years ago was what he encouraged. You create green cards and you create red cards. And he's a firm believer that nobody else can actually interpret what your strengths are. You're the one who knows your strengths. People can judge your performance, but they can't judge your strengths. And what he said, and this is what I've used quite a bit in coaching, is a strength is not only something you're really, really good at, but it's something that renews you. It brings energy whilst doing it. You might be tired post the activity, but it's actually been an investment into you versus an extraction of energy. So when you're doing something that you lose track of time, that you put your hand up for, that you feel you've got an inside track of learning.
Yeah.
That's when you're probably playing in a strength. So I suppose, based on what you were saying as well, Dave, if you do the questionnaire and then you're interviewing, you can also then be asking for questions like, give me examples of when you're doing this. And if the person is saying, I come alive whilst doing this, and obviously a strength means you're good at it as well. Otherwise, it's just a hobby. But you're good at it. It renews you, and I think that's where it can be quite powerful. So in some ways, and do you agree with this? It's not like you have to do the Strength Finders assessment, even though it is there and it's not very, very expensive. So you might as well make use of the resource. But sometimes also just being aware of those things that you love doing versus those things that you loathe doing. And
I love that.
Sometimes people have found themselves in jobs that they loathe doing, but they're actually quite good at the loathe. They're quite good at doing the financial statements, so therefore they've naturally become an accountant. But meanwhile, their strengths actually could be resting somewhere else. But because they're good at it, they get applauded for it, and then they get pushed in that direction.
Oh, so many thoughts coming from what you said. Firstly, the podcast you and I did on purpose leans very nicely into this conversation, because we said, the glory of God is seen greater than a man fully alive. When you're in that space, you're in flow, I think is a nice word. You get into this flow state, Also, a great thing is, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should do something. You should do it. You may have a good attention to detail, and so you end up doing finance, but actually that detail would have been better used in fine art. And you can spend your whole life on finance and only later on discover that you actually should have been an artist. So I think that when you've got an understanding of your strengths, and then you ask good questions, you can see if there's an alignment between the strengths, the data that the strengths providing you, and then the good questioning. And I'm always looking for that alignment, right? But like in Strength Finders, they have what are called executing strengths. And what that means, one of them, for instance, is responsibility. That when you give someone a sense of responsibility, they actually get empowered by it, and it encourages them to want to do things. Or if they have another strength is called the arranger, which is the ability to take lots of differing things and put them in order. They can't help themselves, always putting their shoes in lines and ordering things, right? And it actually, by tapping into that, it engages their energy, and they find it makes them execute, which is why it's an executing strength. So working with your strengths and identifying and again, of course, the other adage is you can't teach a goldfish to climb a tree. And I think one of the things that I'm constantly saying is actually the role that this person is working in compared to the strengths I'm looking at are completely misaligned. And, putting more pressure on them and giving them more KPIs, you're setting someone up for failure, not success. And I think that's a real powerful question there. Are we setting our employees up for success? And how do we know unless we do some basic metrics, to find out, well, who is this? Who before what?
Yeah. And your genes don't take away the hard work, but they just show you where your best chance of success is. And so I suppose it makes sense to just be playing into it. But here's the big question, and this is where I think a bit of tension could come in, because I love both these things. So if you subscribe to strengths, does that mean you don't subscribe to a growth mindset? Because if you think about it, a growth mindset is the belief that with the right amount of attention, effort, tutoring, you and I can grow in possibly maybe everything. And I do love a growth mindset because, a growth mindset says, I can grow versus the fixed mindset, which says, this is who I am. And yet then strengths, which again, I totally do adhere to as well, which says, there's some natural strengths within me. And therefore I should probably focus growth on where I'm already strong. Do you have a thought around this? Or is it just a tension that we live with based on the context in which we're working with?
I love it. I absolutely embrace the growth mindset, which, for me is based in adaptability, flexibility, learning to be able to continually learn new things and unlearn things. I think that are added, are part of growth mindset, right? However, I would say, let's say you had a really good car and you wanted that car to go around your racetrack. You can train the driver of that car to make that car go around that racetrack really, really quickly. And you can make some adaptations to the car, but there are given limitations to that car. Put the car in the context that the car was designed for, and it will be the very best car on the planet. Put that car in a context it's not designed for, it can become a really good car, but it can never compete with the Formula One car that was designed for it. And I do think, and this is where you and I may differ, I do think that those strengths you are born with, they're part of you, and you don't necessarily deviate from them for your whole life. I don't think you do. I think you become more aware of them, and I think you can actually have the look of other strengths. You can learn other attributes. For instance, if you're not good at discipline and detail, you can learn to be better at discipline and detail, without a doubt. But your natural propensity will be spontaneity and creativity. So, there's this tension, isn't there? Become the best you that you can be, but also, try and look at those other areas that you're not strong at. But my final point on this would be the purpose of strengths is not to identify your weakness. The purpose of strength is to amplify those strengths, become even better at those things that you're strong at, and hire other people for where you're weak. Rather than get to this average mean where we're so focused on our weaknesses that we never become the very, very best that we can be. Does that resonate with you?
No, I agree with everything that you said. So I do believe in strengths being innate. As mentioned earlier on, you've got a natural ability for it. And I think the growth mindset probably is best applied within a strengths framework, which says, I'm going to grow best and more skills from a branch where I'm already strong. So, for example,
That's so good.
If I need to learn to plan better and it's not natural for me, can I find something that I am good at from which the new route of a bit of planning comes from? if that makes sense. And
Yeah, yeah.
so maybe I've got a strength in terms of being disciplined or something like that. So you're bringing it into that. But I do believe there is space for definitely both of them, because we don't want people, just sort of saying, well, it's not my strength, I can't grow. We want to shake them up and say, yeah, you can grow. But maybe the way the growth happens needs to come through the branch of a strength.
I love that. And now you also use a personality profiling tool, which I know is different. Because I don't think strength is a personality profiling, it's a strength profile. But tell me a little bit more about what you do then.
So I'm credentialed with Luminous Spark, which is a great personality profiling. It works off 4 of the 5 big 5 personality traits. Those are extrovert, introvert, and I think that's one that we can really understand quite easily. You can see people are naturally born on that scale. Where we do make a mistake, though, is it's not extrovert or introvert. There's a continuum in these things. And in the past, we used to often be either extrovert or introvert, and some people are between that. The next one is some people are agreeable, some people are more unagreeable. So you get the continuum there. Then you get those who are open to experience, and those who are more cautious, and those who are conscientious versus those who are spontaneous.
Okay. Wow.
So those are 4 of the big 5. The 5th big 5 is got to do with neuroticism, quite a big word there, which is about emotional stability. But the Lumina works off that, and people are often, once they hear about the colors, they begin to say, "Oh, yes, I have heard about that." Because it sort of categorizes or uses colors as a language to try and help people understand. But I think the big thing with the personality profiling that I really do like is it just reminds us that no 2 people are the same. And like with strengths, we're made up of a complex combination of natural likes, natural dislikes. And like I say again, introverted. Susan Cain's book, Quiet, amazing book on introvertism. But she sort of shares how they can do tests on a one-day-old baby to already determine sort of which part of that they're heading towards. And just really demonstrating, so much that we are born with some of these things. Now, we might need to develop practices or strategies based on our jobs to become better at certain things. We like to use the word dial it up or dial it down.
Yeah,
these are also very, very useful. So especially useful when you're working in a team and you recognize that people do engage different situations differently. And the question is why? And part of it could be strengths, part of it could be these personality traits that people have. So yeah, a very useful resource. And sometimes I use it in coaching, sometimes I don't. It all just depends on what space we're playing in.
I love it. And that, I think that if you just took one metric like strengths, etc., you're not seeing the whole picture. I also like Enneagram. I know you also have done a bit of work with Enneagram. So Enneagram is another profiling kind of metric. What I like about it is it talks about our emotional states and what we are in good and bad emotional states. So, I think by superimposing and layering a number of these metrics, we actually build a more comprehensive picture of ourselves, right? And I think what's underlying all this is that we should all have a curiosity about ourselves. We should be curious about how do we work? How do I work? Why does that happen to me? Instead of just reacting, we need to become more of, gee, why did that trigger me? Why am I, or, I've come back from this brilliant party, but I feel exhausted. Maybe that says something about me, and I think this speaks to the underlying theme of how curious are we, about ourselves, for goodness sake, what do you think?
I agree with you totally, because we can also beat ourselves up and say, why am I not like Dave, who can go to a party and just have a crowd around him? And meanwhile, I could learn from you, and a bit of the growth mindset coming in there. But also, it's the understanding which says there's natural things at play here as well. And
Yeah.
and I'm going to be best if I'm comfortable with myself, self-compassion, and play
Right.
into those strengths. So at a party, I might rather focus on one individual than be trying to entertain 10 people at the
Yep.
same time. But I love what you're saying, Dave. Carl Jung's got this great line where he says, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will
Mm.
rule our lives and we will call it fate. And
That's say that again, because that says a lot for me.
until we make the unconscious conscious,
Mm.
it will rule our lives and we will call it fate.
And beautifully, because one of the things I say to people when I'm about to explain strengths is, you've been doing these 5 things all your life since you're a little girl or a little boy, but they've become buried in your subconscious. And what we need to do is bring what is in these strengths into the conscious so we can see it and examine it, and then we can affect with it. It can be affected. And that's exactly that quote. Being curious enough to bring out what is unconscious into the realm of the conscious, right?
Yeah. And then there's one more element, and I know we've probably got to land the plane now, but there's one more element that we could add on this as well, or another layer, which would be character or the values that we have, which I think is very, very much more a decision now. And if you think of it, personality is your basic default way as to how you think, feel, and act. Character is more your chosen way of how to use those things. And I like what Adam Grant says. Yeah, he says character is how you show up on the bad days. Personality is how you show up on every other day. And I find it quite a good description. So yeah, I might have a strength or I might have a personality trait that's tough, competitive, say those things. And into that, I bring character, which could be things such as fairness or love. And
Beautifully said.
yeah,
I love
and
that.
that's a part of ourselves that we want to discover as well.
And it goes to curiosity. So I guess my closing comments on this would be, may we be curious. May we be open to exploring ourselves. May we never think that we've come to the end of what we know about ourselves and the people in our lives, but may we continually be open to asking questions, doing these tests, not being afraid of the results, but embracing them. I think that would be my call to action from here. And yourself?
Yeah, I think the results is room for then the curiosity to ask the good questions. And the resources are there, so it makes sense to use them and then ask the questions. And if something doesn't feel right, then you can inquire or chat to somebody who knows stuff about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, use what we've got. The science is good, and it can be most helpful.
Love that. So if you're listening and you would love to do one of these tests, Strength Finders, or work with Mike in his Luminate, then reach out to me or Mike on any of the links that you see, and we would love to help you with your curiosity. Mike, thanks for another really good podcast. And until next time,
Thanks, Dave.
take care. Bye.